Hello everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. I'm David Jones, do this every Friday at 2:30, and how it works, we'll have a quick look at some of the markets or some of the major announcements to watch out for next week. Bit of a quieter week next week. Then we'll take a look at the major markets, stock market indices, a bit of currencies, gold, oil, Bitcoin, all the usual. And then if there's any stuff you want looking at, we'll take a look at that as well. So if there's any markets you want looking at that I don't normally cover, put them in the chat and we'll take a look at that stuff as well. It's been a good week for me this week. I'll talk about some of the trades I've got. I did a webinar last night. I don't know if some of you were on that webinar. It was really interesting, that webinar. I'll talk a bit about that today. If you'd like to see the recording of that webinar, you can drop me an email. So I'll give you all the details when we get into that. But anyway, let's get started. Let's get the housekeeping done first of all. This presentation is only for educational purposes. It does not contain and should not be construed as containing investment advice or an investment recommendation or an offer of or solicitation for a transaction in any financial instrument. David Jones accepts no responsibility for any use that may be made of these comments and for any consequences that result. You should consider whether you understand how spread bets, CFDs, futures, foreign exchange work, and whether you can afford to take the high risk of losing your money. Trading is risky. Okay. Quieter week next week. The big one, I think the big one, and maybe it's not even that big, is Wednesday, UK inflation. But Monday, we do have New Zealand inflation out late Monday night, my time. So I guess in the morning, New Zealand time. Wednesday morning, we've got China GDP. So what does the Chinese economy look like? It does feel that the Chinese economy has much less of an impact on the world in the last sort of recent years, but that's out on Wednesday. So we'll see what that looks like. And UK inflation as well. So that's out Wednesday as well. A bit of volatility you'd expect for the pound off the back of that. We had those US inflation numbers yesterday, caused a right kerfuffle yesterday. If we have a look at the dollar index, that was the move in the dollar index yesterday. I mean, it's a big old move. You know, it rallied, it wiped out about 3 days of losses yesterday in a few hours. So I thought that was interesting. We'll take a look at that today in a bit more detail. So that's that. That's all the stuff for next week. So pretty quiet week next week. Oh, yeah. Quick blurb from me. I do a trading course. It's very good. You can find out more information. It's probably the best trading course out there. Go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk. You can find out more about that. I publicly traded it from November to end of January last year and into this year with a £4,000 account. Made £2,200 nearly of book profits. The breakdown of all the trades, if you want to see them, is on my website. I did it again, May to July, with a £5,000 account. The realised profit was £3,116. I do all this because I think if you're going to talk about trading and claim you're going to teach people about trading, you should actually show you can do it. Not surprisingly, lots of people don't actually do that. So if you go back through the YouTube channel from May to July, you'll see the development of that account as things went along. So if you go to the website, you can see all that. There's a WhatsApp group that's part of the training course. I opened it up to people who didn't do the training course for a fee. So if you want to, you can join that. You can try it for a month. It seems to work quite well. I do a daily update of trades I've got running, what I'm watching. So today, I can't even remember what I talked about today. I said that today for me was probably going to be a day for watching markets. And the markets I was watching, the NASDAQ, S&P, if you're on that webinar last night, I was itching to buy it last night. I think I might have missed it. Let's see. Dollar index, I'd be quite tempted to go short, was what I was saying in the WhatsApp group today. And gold, that's the one market I've missed this week. Really big move in gold. So I talk about stuff I'm watching, trades I'm running. If there's any questions, they can be fired in during the day. The normal subscription is £50 a month. If you go to my website and use the code YouTube, you get it for £40 for the first month, so you can try it out and see what you think. It's like this, in effect, but every morning for less than the price of a cup of coffee. And you can ask loads of questions. I think it's well worth it. That's what a typical update from me looks like on the day. Trustpilot reviews, 5-star Trustpilot reviews for the trading course. I send a newsletter out. I claim it's a weekly newsletter. I probably send it out once every 3 weeks because I really hate writing it and I find it really boring. But when I do write it, it's well worth reading. If you go to the website, the homepage, you can sign up for the newsletter free of charge. So if you go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk, a little box should pop up somewhere. I don't even know where it is. Why is it not there? It should be in there somewhere. I'm not quite sure why it's not appearing. Oh, I'll have to fix that, aren't I? That'll take me a week to try and fix that. Anyway, there's a newsletter. I will send it out this weekend. So it's all on the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk. And one thing that's new, last night I did a webinar. So it was by invitation only, but people had to answer a question to go on the webinar. And I really enjoyed doing it. The topic was, if you could wave a magic wand and fix just one major challenge that you continue to face with your trading, what would that be? Now, I wasn't really expecting a load of replies to this. I ended up getting about 60 replies and it was really interesting. So I did a webinar last night. It ran for about an hour and 15 minutes. It was free to the people who replied to that question. Looking at what their responses were. So here's all the responses in here. Blah, 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 blah. Loads of responses. Really interesting. And what I thought was really interesting was there were so many common themes that people struggle with in trading. They might say it a different way, but loads of people have the same problems. So did that webinar last night. Maybe some of you were on it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to watch the recording of that webinar, so if you're here today watching on YouTube and you want to see the recording, like I say, it's an hour and 15 minutes long, send me an email. So my email address is dj@davidjonestrading.co.uk. Send me an email saying, please send me the webinar recording and I will send you the link to the webinar recording. I'm a little bit behind on where I should be today. I'm going to send this out over the weekend. But it was quite a different, I do these YouTube things every week and they're good fun, obviously, but it's very much bang, 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 bang. Let's look at loads of markets. Whereas this webinar was much more looking at the challenges psychologically and from a strategy point of view we face in trading. So I thought it's much more useful than a YouTube live stream, as fun as the YouTube live streams are to do. So if you'd like to have a look at that webinar, like I say, drop me an email and I'll send you out the link to it over the weekend. All right, that's that, and that's free, amazingly. So that's all that. Go to the website to find out about the trading course and all that usual stuff. Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look at these markets. What a week it's been. I've had a really good week this week. I was long the Nasdaq anyway, coming into this week. I think I mentioned it last week. I've been long the Nasdaq since last Wednesday, so that did really well. I came out of that yesterday. I bought the FTSE on Monday, I think, Monday or Tuesday, down here somewhere at 74.85. Came out of that this morning, so that did okay. What else am I in? I'm Aussie dollar, New Zealand dollar. I'm slightly losing money on that at the moment. I'm short Aussie dollar, New Zealand dollar. And I bought heating oil. That's turned out to be a good trade. I bought heating oil, on Wednesday of this week. And that's done well. So, so I'm still in the heating oil trade. I'm still short the Aussie dollar against the New Zealand dollar. I'm about 15 points the wrong way at the moment. And I'm long the dollar index as well. So it's been a really interesting week. Obviously, we came into this week with the news over the weekend of the attack that happened on Israel. And we saw, not surprisingly, some moves in markets. Nothing too drastic, apart from, let's have a look at it in a bit more detail in a minute. So this was where stock markets opened Sunday night. So the Nasdaq closed at 15,000-ish on Friday. Opened around 14,880 Sunday night, but you can see shook it off fairly quickly. Oil, I thought was the interesting one. I didn't do it, but in the WhatsApp group, I was saying the trade I would do, I would be short oil. And the reason I was going to go short oil, we're not seeing the gap here. If I change this to a 5-minute chart, do we see a gap? No, that was the move on Sunday night. So basically, last Friday, oil closed around $83. Gapped up Sunday night to open about 85.5. Not surprisingly, when we have, a major global event like we had in Israel, and it's near oil-producing countries, or maybe oil-producing countries get involved, whatever, we see the oil price react. But I thought it was interesting that after that initial gap, oil really couldn't do much on Monday, so I did think that the trade I would do if I had to do it would be short oil. I didn't do it, but it would have been okay. And I'd probably go short again, actually, oil up here. It's interesting that oil has rallied up to that high, that Monday high, and it's failed again. So yeah, whatever. But we saw a lot of volatility. But then markets, I've just seen one of the questions that's come in. One of the questions from earlier, what do you think about what happening in the Middle East will affect oil, gas and indices? Just look what markets do. Look at stock markets this week. We had a wobble on Sunday night, sorry, but the market's carried on higher. Yeah, so the market is telling you what it thinks about it, and at the moment the market does not appear to be too worried. Obviously it is. I'm sure we've all seen the pictures and followed the news. It's an absolutely terrible thing that's going on, but stock markets are not too worried about this. So if you're trading, me, I just go with the market. Anyway, let's look at markets in a bit more detail, and let's take a look at what's going on. So what are we talking about? What's this? NASDAQ 100. So I was long the NASDAQ. I was hoping to buy it this afternoon. Maybe there's still a chance to buy it this afternoon. Maybe there's a bit of volatility this afternoon. But the trend had been up. For me, the trend is still up. Okay, it's had a little wobble with the, the trend line. But for me, as long as the old lows from about there, let's say 14.2, stay in place, I think the trend is still up on the NASDAQ. So yeah, you could argue, absolutely you could argue, because there's always two sides to an argument when it comes to markets. You could absolutely argue that correction is still going on from those highs. Yeah, so maybe you might say, well, actually, I want to short it up here. Well, fair enough. Knock yourself out. That seems a reasonable trade as well. So I think it is interesting, and perhaps that hasn't resolved yet. But overall, I am still bullish on stock markets. Same for the S&P. I think if we went back to the October lows or whatever it is. So October lows look like that. We've had a bit of a wobble through the trend line. I would give it the benefit of the doubt, and I would still be a buyer of the dips. But, we still have, again, if you were going to pick up on the correction from the top, that's arguably still going. So I think ultimately these markets will move higher as long as these old levels hold. Let's call it 4,200 on the S&P. So there's been a lot of opportunity, absolutely, in the short term. The trade I was looking to do today, I mentioned it on last night's webinar, and I mentioned it in the WhatsApp group this morning. This was the low from yesterday between 7 and 8 UK time. The trade I was looking to do during normal market hours, does the market come back and hold the low? And then I want to be a buyer. And it did it. Well, it did it here, but this is outside market hours. And it's taken off. So for me, the trade for this afternoon, because of course, we might still see a bit of a wiggle back. What happens near yesterday's lows? That's the interesting thing for me. If it goes racing away, then I won't do anything. But I think it's quite interesting to see what happens. So that's the US indices. Let's see where we are. What's that? Russell. Let's not bother with that. DAX. The DAX is interesting. I was thinking about buying the DAX this week, but I bought the FTSE. The DAX trade would have been a good trade into Thursday. But actually on the daily charts, the trend is down on the DAX. And we have broken on the DAX. We've broken some reasonably big levels on the DAX. Blah, blah, blah. Does look quite weak, I would say. So for me, if I was going short, I'd have a stop above 15.6. So I think for me, until the DAX manages to break above 15.6, I wouldn't want to be a buyer. So I'd be looking to sell short. FTSE sort of doing its own thing as usual. Pretty sideways year for the FTSE. Started the year about 7,500. Here we are at 7,650. Just been trading up and down. No direction. I think the trend is, on the hourlies though, the trend is still up just about for me. So I'd be a buyer. But nothing too exciting on the daily chart. The Japanese 225, the old Nikkei, bit scrappy, but the trend is still up for me for this year. So nothing too exciting there. So for me, as usual, it's the NASDAQ and the S&P. And the short-term trade, do we see the lows from yesterday tested this afternoon? We've still got 6 hours of trading left in the US. It's only just opened. Let's see what happens this afternoon. Maybe there's a trade there. interesting one to watch next week. But probably the more interesting market is the dollar index for me at the moment. So I'm long the dollar index. I had been the wrong way on this for quite some time, but I was saved by the bell yesterday with this rally yesterday. If you look at the dailies, that is the trend on the dollar index on the daily chart going back to July, right? So we are in an uptrend on the dollar index, looking something like that. Again, it's had a bit of a wobble through the trend line. I don't really care about that. So I would still be, from a big picture point of view, still be a buyer of the dip on the dollar index. So I think it's a really interesting market to watch next week. What will be interesting, if it comes under pressure and takes out this low from Thursday, are we going to see a much deeper sell-off? So I'm still giving that trend the benefit of the doubt in the dollar index, the bigger uptrend for the last 3 months or so, 3 or 4 months now. But let's see what happens next week. So I think that's an interesting market to watch. I think those US inflation numbers were higher than expected yesterday. So again, raised concerns that the US might have to raise rates or rates stay higher for longer or some such stuff. So I thought that's interesting market to watch. And of course, with the dollar index doing so well, we have markets like pound against the dollar that had been having a bit of a run. This is on the daily chart again for the last week, and then bang, got slammed yesterday, and the downtrend stays in place. So that downtrend, what is the date today? 13th. So the downtrend has been going for 3 months. Interesting. So, clearly lots of markets impacted by what happens with the pound against dollar. Euro is the same. The euro against the dollar did trickle to a new low for the year earlier this month. So, really interesting market, I think, the dollar index at the moment. So that's one to watch next week. Let's talk about gold. This is the market I've missed this week because I was looking for a trade on gold initially on Monday. This is Monday. This is the gap higher because, again, unrest. Traditionally, we see the price of gold do well in times of uncertainty. So that was the move higher on Monday, and I thought I want to sell it the same way I wanted to sell oil. But actually, it did carry on higher the next day, so I changed my mind the next day and thought I want to buy a dip now. But I never really got the dip in gold, and it has absolutely raced away this week, particularly in the last whatever it is, however many hours. We've seen gold gain $100 since the Friday low, which is a 5-6% move in gold over the last week. So you could take the view, absolutely valid view, I think, up here. Well, listen, the big trend in gold has been down since May of this year. So we're 5 months into that. Now it's time to go short. The gold market is overshot to the upside. Perfectly sensible trade. Interesting market to watch next week, I think. If I was a seller up here, then I'd be expecting it to run out of steam pretty soon. And I'd have a stop above 1950 or so at the moment is what I would do. So yeah. So that's I think is an interesting market, although it is still very strong as of the last hour or so. We saw that surge up. So I think that for once, I think gold is quite an interesting market to watch next week, and I would be expecting the sellers to come back in. Let's see what happens. Now silver's done okay. We did the silver trade last week, for those of you who remember. So I did buy silver last week. This is real money. This is the account I use on the YouTube live stream. So I did buy silver last week at 21.23. The market's currently 22.67, so I've made nearly $300 so far on that. Let's see how that one turns out. I thought it was, I think I bought it last week saying, well, look, the trend had been up. Has it overshot to the downside? Let's buy it and see what happens. And it has bounced back in. Let's see. So I'm quite happy to stick with that trade for a bit and see where it goes. Not as exciting at the moment as silver, I don't think, as gold, sorry. But it's still an interesting market, I think. So that's that. Oil, I don't know on oil. From a medium term point of view, I'd probably have to say that trend is still up from June of this year. So I'd rather be a buyer than a seller. From a short term point of view, I mean, it has really reversed, doesn't it? in the current hour. It's gone from 87.20 down to 86. It's a big move in the current hour. It's interesting that those highs from Monday have capped the price again today on Friday. So I don't really have that much of an opinion on oil at the moment. But yeah, let's see what it looks like next week. Nothing too exciting for me in there at the moment. Heating oil, I'm in the trade. I've got a trading stop on the trades. Let's see. It was based on the hourlies because the trend is up, has been up. So I'd quite happily buy the dip on heating oil. Natural gas, we had that breakout in natural gas. I would like to buy it, but I'd rather see a bigger dip. You know, we had natural gas since March of this year. It was trapped by $3 on the top. It broke out at the beginning of October, and it's sort of selling off a bit now. It'd be interesting to see where this sell-off stops, is my view on natural gas. So not much for me in that one at the moment. Let's see what happens in the next few days or so. So, but of course, if you're in the WhatsApp group, you will hear all about it if anything changes on that. So let's see. Let's see what happens with natural gas. So nothing too exciting for me in there. Bitcoin, did that do anything? I mean, it is boring, Bitcoin, isn't it? You know, it's trading now where it was in May 2022. You know, so 18 months. It's gone down a bit. It's gone up a bit. It's not really done much. I would still buy the dip though in Bitcoin. I say that every week. It doesn't really do much. You know, we have had the trend. It's fallen out the trend, but 24/7 has held the market up. If we flip this over to an hourly, I'm sure we could see a little trend chugging away there. So yeah, but I don't really trade Bitcoin. So it's just a bit boring, isn't it? Bitcoin. Let's have a quick flip through some of these commodity markets. Palladium, I thought it was interesting. Hitting multi-year lows, Palladium. Look at that. Absolutely crazy market, Palladium. So Palladium's back to nearly a 5-year low. Still under pressure by the looks of it. Platinum, a little bit sideways. Nothing too exciting there. Cattle, I had been in this trade in the past. I'm not in it now. Look at that trend. Who'd have thought it? Can make money from buying cows. So the trend in live cattle has been an absolute great trend. Sugar, I am in that trade. I've been in that trade since July somewhere. It needs to break out. Let's see if it does. Soybeans, I thought this was interesting. Soybeans, I mentioned this in the WhatsApp group. It's no trend really for the last year, but it's right at the bottom of the range. It did have a quick look through the bottom of the range. If you believed that it was too cheap down here, it's an interesting trade. If we saw soybeans rotate its way back into the range. Copper is another interesting one. Obviously, copper, you know, will move dependent to what the US dollar is doing. You know, we've come back to the lows for the year in copper. This is the daily chart, so I thought that was pretty interesting. Coffee is on a bit of a level. Coffee as well. So coffee is right on the lows for the year and has turned around over the last 4 days. Orange juice, great trend in orange juice. Look at that. Since whenever it is, July 2022. I've watched that and I haven't bought it at all, like an idiot. But there we go. Great trend. Breaking out again today. Orange juice. What's that gone from then? Let's have a look. So in July 22, orange juice was 154 a barrel. Let's say it's a barrel. And here it is nearly 400. So it's 150%, something like that, isn't it? Plus 150% plus increase in the price of orange juice in the last 15 months or so, 16 months. So, you know, great trend there. Cocoa. No, cocoa, that's not cocoa. Cocoa, another one with a good trend. So when you go outside some of the financials, there are still lots of interesting markets out there, and I tend to trade these more on a medium-term basis. So next week, stock markets, obviously, be quite nice if we got a pullback this afternoon. I would like to buy the pullback. I think that's quite interesting. Dollar index, because we had a bit of a surge yesterday. I'm not sure if I believe the surge, even though I'm long, it works in my favour. I'm not sure we won't get another dip down. And gold are we seeing an important short-term top in gold? Has the market rallied too far? So I think there's a few bits and pieces to watch there, and there'll be different things that come up during the week. So let's see. Right, we'll have a look at the stuff you want looking at. Don't forget, if you want to have access to that webinar, I thought it was a really useful webinar. Drop me an email, dj@davidjonestrading.co.uk. I will send the link out over the weekend. And it was talking about some of the psychological issues. A really common problem was that was, how many was it? It was probably, so there were about 60 responses. It was probably about 20% of the responses were people, it's the classic thing, letting losers run away from them and ending up having bigger losing trades and snatching up profits. You know, there are a few reasons why 70% of people don't make money trading, and that's one of them. You know, it's where if you're when you're right, you make £100, and when you're wrong, you lose £180. It's very hard to beat those maths, but that's what people do. So it was quite interesting that was one of the big takeouts from the responses that came back. So I talked about that and perhaps ways about dealing with that. But drop me an email and I'll send you the link to that over the weekend. Right, let's have a look at the stuff you want looking at. What do you think about Aviva? Aviva. I'm going to crack my dad joke. Did you know what's the insurance company that has a branch in Nevada? What's it called? Aviva Las Vegas. I'm laughing at it. Aviva, what is Aviva? Is it AV full stop, isn't it? AV, that's the one. Aviva. What was the question? What do you think about Aviva? Talk of a takeover, price estimate to go up to 6 if it goes ahead. Now, I'd be massively sceptical of that, James, because I think if everyone's talking about takeover and the price is going to go to 6, why is the price trading at 4? Huh? So it's going to go at 50%, but everyone's going to hang around so all of us on the YouTube live stream can get on board. So I'm a little bit sceptical about any £6 takeover thing. It'll be sod's law. It's going to happen in the next half an hour and prove me to be completely wrong. So I would be a little bit sceptical about that. So, but looking at the chart, and you know, with takeovers, I'm guessing there's got a bit spiky here, didn't it? On the 6th of October. I wonder if the takeover stuff started happening then, the chatter started happening then. To me, that looks boring, Aviva. We're in this sideways range. You know, we've got the lows at 370, we've got the highs at 470, and it's in the middle of the range. So for me, it's an absolute zero interest in something like that. But, you know, let's say you were going to buy it and you're going to gamble on the takeover. If it did happen at 6, that seems massively ambitious. They're paying 50% more than where it's trading in the market. So I don't believe the 6 number. Where would your stop loss go? I don't know. If you bought them at 4 now, 411, put a stop at 350, then your risk is 60p, 70p. And if they do go to 6, you got 190 upside. It's a good risk reward. Yeah, let's see what happens. I would make the bet that this time next week they're still trading at 4. Oh, here we go. Aviva shares leap on speculation of takeover by foreign buyer. So this is yeah, it was last Friday. So that spike we saw last Friday in Aviva, that one there. So that's the old doodah. Shows rose as much as 10% 1 point, be closing blah blah blah. It'd be attracted interest, so it could happen. Oh, actually, £6 a share. Oh, £6 a share. Well, it seems absolutely ridiculous. Well, there you go. Well, yeah, I'd be really sceptical because I would have thought it'd be a lot higher. But what do I know? I'm quite intrigued now to see what happens with it. Let's see. Let's see what happens. The risk reward is good, like I say. You know, it seems that there is a floor for Aviva at 370. If you fancied it as a takeover punt, you know, it's interesting. Let's see what happens. What do you think? You may be aware that XOM is seeking to buy PXD. No, and I've got no idea. Well, ExxonMobil, okay, is going to buy PXD, Pioneer Natural Resources. Okay, that would explain the jump in the share price. So the price went from, where did it go? 215 to 235 on Friday. Okay. It's an all-stock transaction. What next for your PXD position? I don't have a PXD. Do I have a PXD? I do have a PXD position. I don't even know what trades I've got open. Oh, that's good, isn't it? I don't know. I've got no idea what to do with that. I think I'm just going to leave it and see what happens. So what do they say? It's going to be an all-stock transaction. So I'm up. I can't even remember when we did that trade. So I bought them at 214, and the market's currently 244. So it's done all right. It's made 15%. So they must have bought them in here somewhere, I guess. I'm just going to stick with it and see what happens, because even if it is definitely happening, let's see where it gets done. If it doesn't happen, the trend has been up. So yeah, thanks for pointing that one out though, and reminding me what I've actually got trades in. So that's done okay. Let's see. I think with takeovers, I just tend, unless it's, the thing has jumped massively and you think, well, that's too much profit to risk, I'll just run it and see what happens. There's no right or wrong ever with this, but that's what I would do. BAE Systems. Now I'm going to guess they should have jumped because there is obviously conflict has happened in the world. Yes, there we go. So defense stocks, of course, not surprisingly, do well when we have unease in the world, for instance. But they've been doing well for ages. BAE Systems, they've been trending higher since November 2020. So we're 3 years into this. Or is that all-time highs? It looks like it, doesn't it? Wow, fresh all-time highs. I would have been by the dip anyway before any of this. The situation in Israel is clearly, I think, is a catalyst here for this stock price. So I've been by the dip anyway, breaking out. For me, the only question would be, do you just jump on board now and you buy them at 1088 or whatever they are, or do you think, well, actually maybe it's a bit overstoked this week because of what's going on? So yeah, but I would be a buyer one way or other. Let's come back to them in a week's time. Let's see where it is in a week's time. But absolute uptrends for ages anyway in BAE Systems. Not surprisingly, had quite a lift over the last week. I mean, that's a big move, isn't it? That's where did they close on Friday? Where's the Friday data? Okay, there's Friday. So Friday they closed at 980. Today they're 1080. So they've moved £1. Anyway, it's a 10% move. I think absolutely driven by world events there on the week. Let's see what happens. Let's have a look in a week's time. Do you consider overnight holding costs when trading? They can be costly, specifically re-commodities. Yes, I do, and I'll often trade the contract, the quarterly contract. You can trade, I don't know if I've got any here. Yes, so for example, the silver trade here that I did last week, I did the December silver. So the cost of financing is baked into that price. I don't pay an extra debit overnight for holding that. These others are cash markets, so they'll pay the debit overnight. So yeah, particularly if I think it's going to be a medium-term trade, what I do, I'll trade the quarterly contract. So I'll trade, if I traded the silver or oil, I might trade the November oil or something. So I don't have to worry too much about the overnight. If it's a short-term trade, like the stuff I tend to do on the likes of the NASDAQ and the S&P, I'll trade the cash contract and just accept I've got to pay the overnight costs. And these are real costs. Obviously, if we went back 2 years, they weren't that punitive really, because interest rates were low. But now interest rates have gone up. It absolutely does have an impact on your trading. If you're paying LIBOR plus 2%, whatever it is. Hang on. So LIBOR, I don't know idea what it is at the moment. What is LIBOR today? There we go. So LIBOR at the moment, London Interbank Offered Rate is, let's say it's 5%. The broker charges you, let's say 2.5% on top. 7.5%. It costs you, if you held the position for a year and it never went anywhere, because you're trading using margin, it'll still cost you 7.5%. Yeah. When LIBOR was like, I don't know, 1%, clearly it's very different. So yeah, I do keep an eye on it, and I tend to trade the quarterly contracts rather than for a longer term position. So let's see. Kraft Heinz. Oh, that's been clobbered, isn't it, yesterday? What's going on with that? Let's have a look on the dailies. What do you think? What do you think about the trend? Trend's down, isn't it? It's quite interesting. It's pretty boring, isn't it? over the last couple of years. Big sideways range. It's fallen out the bottom of the range. The aggressive trade for me would be, has it overshot on the downside? So I might watch it to see, do we see a bit of recovery coming in? I wouldn't buy it today. So that would be the trade for me. Has it overshot? There's no trend there, but this plunge through. Was it on earnings? What was it on? It was on something, wasn't it? Let's have a look. Oh, UBS cuts Kraft Heinz price target to 34 from 39. That's interesting. I would buy that. If it stabilised today, I would buy it because and take the view it's overreacted to that downgrade from UBS. So it's not. I don't think it's that exciting, but maybe it's going to knock itself back up into 34, the 34 plus area. Let's see. Mackie D's, McDonald's. Wow, that's been hit as well, isn't it? I wouldn't. That has really swan dived, that one, isn't it? So from $300 in July to $250, so it's lost 15%. I would watch it, but I don't think there's nothing that really jumps out at me there because that's been absolutely clobbered. Dollar Canada. I think there was some interesting trades in that. Perhaps last week, I'm not so sure at the moment. I mean, there's a dollar, Canadian dollar. Looks like that. Which is, again, I'd say it's been a little bit boring, hasn't it? Over the last 12 months. I don't even know. What would you do? You could go short, I suppose, and put a stop above 138. Maybe you see if it drops to 134 and buy the dip. So for me, there's not an awful lot jumping out on that for me. So that's one I would look at it and I would go and have a look at something else. Can we have a look at aluminium spot? Let's look at that. Looks boring, doesn't it? What's going on with that aluminium? Nothing. It's just dull. I suppose you could buy it. You could take the view. If you had a long-term view on aluminium, you know, it's based around 2100 a year ago. It did have a run. It's come back down to it, and it's just been a bit dull, hasn't it, since July? So if you thought, well, the price of aluminium is going to go up, it's quite an interesting level to trade, isn't it? And I would buy it with a stop the other side of 2050, but there's nothing that exciting to me. I'd say in that one at the moment. You know, we clearly had a bit of excitement there end of September, and it's been a bit dull since then, isn't it? So yeah, not a lot in there. What instruments do you use for index or commodities trading? Because I'm based in the UK and I am a UK taxpayer, I trade using spread bets. Very efficient way of trading. If you can do it, if you're in the UK. You can trade using contracts for difference, of course. Everywhere else in the world, you can trade using those in the UK. So that's what I trade. So leveraged instruments. That's what I do. So I don't trade futures, but I used to trade futures back in the old days. But if you're familiar with how futures work, if you're an American, for example, and you're familiar with futures, you know what we have on this side of the world. We still have futures, but we have these things called spread bets or CFDs, which are leveraged financial instruments. So I use those. I've held Aviva for a few years just for the income from the dividends. Yeah, that would have been good. I don't know what is their dividend yield, Aviva. Where's it gone? I suppose even if they pay, I don't know, let's say they pay a 6% dividend, if they go nowhere for a year, you've still made 6%, haven't you, from holding them? I do that with my investing stuff, try and find high dividend paying stocks like HSBC is one of mine for the same reasons. And it did actually, I've been fortunate, it has actually gone up. But one of the reasons I bought it was a sort of boring dividend stock. So yeah, I can completely understand that approach. Coca-Cola. Okay. Wow, they've all been hit, haven't they? Big sell-off in these big blue chips. What would you do? I mean, I would say I would be tempted to be a bit of a bottom fisher down here. You know, we're down to, it's a 2-year low, or nearly 2-year low. December 2021 low. If you thought the market had overshot, be a buyer at 53, where they're trading now. Let's do that trade. We haven't done a trade today, have we? Let's buy Coca-Cola, and I'm going to take the view. It's overshot. It's at the bottom of the range for the last couple of years, and we're going to see a recovery. Let's do that. Coca-Cola, Here we go. That's the one I want, isn't it? There we go. So if we add that, default workspace. Okay, so I'm going to buy Coke. I'm going to take the view. So it's a turnaround trade, or whatever you want to call it. I have to be a bit patient. So I'm going to buy them. And where's my stop going to go, did I say? Yeah, 50 seems fair enough, doesn't it? So I'm going to buy them now. I'm going to buy 18 with a stop at 50. I don't know if I've got enough margin for this, actually. 50. Oh, yeah, I've got loads. Okay, so let's risk. Let me do the maths in my head. If I buy 60 of them, let's buy 70. So we'll buy 70 Coke at 53.10. Stop loss at $50. My risk is $217 if I get stopped out. So just to go back to that question about what do I use to trade. So if I'm buying 70 Coke and I'm paying $53 a share, I've got a $3,700 position in Coke. But you can see the margin requirement down here, if you can see that, is £611. So I'm using leverage. So I've got 3.7, but I only need to put up 20% of that. Anyway, chit chat, let's do the trade. There we go. So we bought Coke, bought 70 at 53.10. Let's see how that one works out. So there's the trade. There's the trade in there on Coke. So yeah, so it's not what I would do normally, but we haven't done a trade today, so I thought let's bang a trade in and see what happens. But quite interesting to see if we do see the buyer step back in. You know, it's not been below 52 since March 2021, which is what, 2.5 years ago. So let's see what happens here. Let's see if the buyers come back in for Coke here. So I think that's it. If there's no more questions, I think we're pretty much done on that, aren't we? So like I say, what to watch next week? Absolutely stock markets for me. And even this afternoon, maybe there is a trade in this thing this afternoon if it sells off a little bit from here and has a look at the lows on the NASDAQ and the S&P. Let's see what happens. So I think that's interesting. Dollar index is interesting next week because it has had a rocket put under it, but I wonder if it'll drift back a little bit. And gold, because perhaps gold has got a little bit ahead of itself, and we are still within that downtrend that's been in place since May of this year. So it's been 5 months on that downtrend, hasn't it? Let's see what next week looks like. So as usual, we'll wrap things up there. Like I say, if you want access to that webinar, I think it's really useful. Drop me an email, dj@davidjonestrading.co.uk. I'll send you the link to the webinar. Go to the website, davidjonestrading.co.uk. Find out about the trading course, the webinar, the WhatsApp group. You can join that using the code YouTube and get this sort of fantastic insight every day direct to your phone. And that's it, really. Yeah, we'll wrap it up there. Interesting week. Obviously, you know, with a surprise shock start because of what happened in Israel over the weekend. Let's see what happens over the next week. Lots to watch in markets. It's a quieter week next week on the economic calendar, but still lots to watch. And for me, it's stock market indices, dollar index, and gold. We'll wrap things up there. Have a good weekend. Let's hope Wales beat Argentina tomorrow in the Rugby World Cup quarterfinal. And we'll come back next Friday and do it all again then. Okay, good luck with your trading.